You need to stand on business, and the business is standing on you.
Yes.
I don't like it. Welcome back to another episode of the podcast. Today I have a very special guest that I will let introduce herself.
Hi everyone, my name is Faith Sheffield. I am Eboni's yoga teacher, friend, but I also work in community and social responsibility with the Pistons, so excited to be here and share about wellness and all things.
Yes, I'm so excited to have her. We're going to jump right in with the first question. As Faith said, she is my yoga instructor. So today we are going to be talking, from the title you can tell, about balance and boundaries. So the first question is, what areas of your life do you struggle the most with setting boundaries?
I would say like personal relationships. I'm somebody that is a huge empath and wants to do, if I love you, I'm going to do everything for you. And so I think sometimes I do too much and then I'm like, take a step back.
Yeah.
And so like when people ask me to do things when I'm supposed to be resting, it's always like this internal fight of, I should do this because I want to and that they need me, but I also like need to remember to put myself first because I'm running around all the time and need rest too.
Yeah, that's so interesting because I feel like for me it's my like professional settings.
Okay.
I struggle with setting boundaries because I feel like, okay, like as a student, you know, I'm supposed to be on all the time. Mm-hmm. So no matter what, if someone's like, oh, you have to do like this clinic opportunity or whatever, I'm like, okay, I just have to do it. It's like necessary. And then in my personal life, I'm like, no, I'm not doing it.
I feel that. I mean, I was talking to one of my bosses the other day, and she's like, I think you're in your yes era, and you need to not be.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, oh, I want to do this and this, because I like started as an intern and now full time, and so I'm like so eager. But then there's always that like reality check of like, slow down, like you can say no. And so I think that's like, for example, we sub a lot for yoga. You know, if one of our teachers needs a break or something, I'll fill in. And I think that's a place where I finally am like, all right, no.
Yeah.
I have my set of classes and like I'm so excited to help out, and you know, but sometimes it's like you need to put yourself first. So
yeah. Do you ever feel like you have to prioritize one or the other? Like you have professional boundaries and then you have like personal boundaries. Do you ever find yourself being like, I have to say no to this because I said yes to this?
Yes. I feel like like I said, yes era, trying to move away from that. I feel like I get caught at times saying yes to too many things, and then I'm like, Faith, why did you do this?
Yeah.
And so I think like the newness of your position or your circumstance, like that first year or so, you're gonna want to say yes. And then I think the more like depth in relationships that you find, the more comfortable you are with being your genuine self and being like, all right, like I need to be honest and say that this is too much. And so I think it's like trusting the people that are around you, or building that trust and that rapport that you have for yourself and with others to be like, all right, this is who I am. Even telling your boss or whoever, I tend to say yes. Can you check me sometimes? And be like, Faith, you're doing it again. So I think it's just like being honest with yourself and those around you.
Yeah, I feel like I struggle sometimes with I've been telling myself I need to undersell and over-deliver because I find myself making more. I'm like, oh yeah, I can get it done.
Yeah.
And then I can't get it done. And then I have to come back and be like, oh, actually, it's impossible. Like, I cannot do it.
Yeah.
When I would have been in a different situation if I literally just said no from the beginning.
Right.
You know, like, so that is what I'm in that era of being like, okay, I'd rather disappoint you in the front and then be like, actually, look, I'm a superhero, I did it. And then instead of being like, oh, yeah, she can get everything done, and then she cannot.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I was talking to, again, one of my supervisors, and I had forgotten, like, a portion of a project, and I was like, I'm like, I don't want to go to creative and ask them to do this last minute thing. And he was just telling me, like, the second you realize it, go. Yeah. Like, go tell them, because it's like, the more you wait, you're like, oh, shoot, I didn't do this. It's like, now you're waiting even longer. Yeah. Now it's going to be more of a problem. So it's like, just rip off the Band-Aid and, like, admit to the mistake, take the accountability, and then be like, all right, it wasn't that bad.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's
hopefully
like,
I don't do this again.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, next question. How do you handle people overstepping or breaking your boundaries?
Old Faith would say I don't handle that.
Okay.
It's interesting, because I think with some people, I have a very easy time, like, this is my boundaries, you're not going to cross it. If you do, I'm going to be really communicative.
Yeah.
And then other people that I might have a sweet spot for, I'm like, well, like, they probably didn't mean it in that way, so let me just, like, give some wiggle room. But I've been really, really trying to be like, I'm an overthinker all of the time. My mind is just like,
yeah,
you know. And so for me, it's like, I'm beating myself up over it. I'm thinking about it 24/7. They're just living their life. Mm-hmm. Like, how is that fair? Not to, like, victimize them, but it's like, if this is eating so much at me, like, Faith, just say something.
Yeah.
And then half the time it's like, okay, have an adult conversation. It might be a little sticky or, like, uncomfortable at first, but, like, again, I'm all about, like, taking a relationship into a deeper place, and the only way to do that is to be honest and to be communicative. And then you're like, okay, now, even if it was uncomfortable, now I know that I can trust you enough or communicate with you enough to be able to move past, and then be like, hey, like, that wasn't cool what you did, like, how can we change it? And then always check in, like, what do you need, what do you want? And I'm also, like, speaking this into existence, because I would love for all relationships to be like that.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's harder. Like I said, some people this is my rule, you know, and other people I'm like, I wish I had that discipline, but I don't. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like it's all about of giving yourself grace too. Mm-hmm. Because when people overstep your boundaries, sometimes for me it feels like I am letting myself down by letting them do that. It's like, you need to stand on business, and the business is standing on you. Yes. I don't like it. But I try to give myself grace and say, you know, you can't be just this one strict person and not have any wiggle room at all. Yeah. So you have to give people grace, but when you give people grace, make sure that you leave some grace for yourself.
For sure. Yeah. I've been in therapy for forever, and I always think, like, my sister and I are really close, and she was wanting to read a book together, and it's all about self-awareness. And I was telling my therapist, who is also my sister's therapist. Okay. She was like, I don't really know why you guys are reading that, because you both are, like, extremely self-aware. But, like, where my problem comes in is, like, I'm so self-aware that I'm like, oh, it's fine that I'm, like, not valuing this boundary because I'm aware of it.
Yes. Okay.
So I, like, with letting yourself down, I totally feel that even more, because I'm like, I know what I'm doing, but I'm going to do it anyway because I know. So I'm really, like, getting away from it. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I totally feel that.
Yeah, that is interesting. Me and my sister and mother, once upon a time, had the same therapist.
I want to say, you're welcome, therapist, because you get 3 points of the same story. The first year, what did she say? She was always like, oh, your sister. And now she's like, Hope. Yeah. I'm like, thank you. Like
we know.
Everybody knows in the situation.
Why are we pretending this is not patient doctor confidentiality?
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't know. Now I need to ask my therapist. Well, they're no longer my therapist. But I need to go back and be like, was that weird? Because I feel like we just were all complaining.
Right. In my head, I'd be like, that's not what your mom said.
Right. Because I'm definitely going to judge you, which is why I'm not a therapist. Because I would definitely be judging you like, that's not what I said. I think you're making up things. And I would probably pick a side.
Right.
Like, you have to pick a side, in that situation.
Or I'd be like, hopefully a therapist want to do this, but, like, like prick at questions to like bring a conversation that somebody else brought up. But
like, oh, they yesterday I heard about this. Let's talk about that.
Right.
No, that's why therapy's not for me. But I do have a new therapist, and we have different therapists. And I do find myself like judging my sister's therapist sometimes because she'll tell me like, she'll be like, oh yeah, I already talked to my therapist about it, and I'll be like, and what did she say? You might need to run it back.
Yeah.
What advice is she giving you? Because I think she might be wrong.
Okay, can I pick a question?
Yes.
I'm gonna go through the jar. I feel like a kid, even though I'm reading my own question. All right, if you were to give someone advice on being a boundary queen, what would you tell them? I love children. I want to have children. I'm the baby of 4. It's not my time to have kids yet, but I would say, like, how would you want your daughter to be treated?
Yeah.
You know, like, would you, if your daughter was reading this text message to you, would you want to slap the person, or like would you like congratulate or like be happy that your daughter was in that relationship, no matter like if it's a boyfriend or cousin or aunt or uncle? Like, you know, I think when you can put it outside of yourself and be like, this is somebody that I care, like I birthed and everything, like the highest amount of care, highest level of care, like can you swallow what they're being told?
Yeah, I think that's so good. For me, I feel like I would tell someone to be willing to adjust, because when you're setting boundaries, you have to also adjust to like whichever version of yourself this is, right? Because some days it's like, no, I need to like be strict and I need to like be like A, B, C. And some days I need to give myself again that grace of being like, okay, and like I said earlier, like not judging yourself for sometimes moving boundaries, because sometimes boundaries change. It's not that I'm just letting people cross my boundaries, but I just don't have those same boundaries. Like the boundaries that I have with a friend are different from the boundaries that I have with my sister. And then if my friendship like grows into almost like a sisterhood, right? Now it kind of changes a little bit, and I have to be able to like pivot and move with that. Yeah.
And I think one part that I struggle with is like, I'm a talker. Like I love to share with my friends, not everything, but when I do, it's almost like when I'm not holding a boundary, I have to like preface of like, I know that, you know what I mean? And like sometimes it's hard to explain to other people when you shift boundaries, but it's like as long as you have that like compass within yourself, it's like at the end of the day, it's you and your life and not theirs.
My best friend is the same way. She's like an oversharer. And I am not like that at all. So I'll be like having a conversation with you and her, and I would just be looking like,
can't believe you're saying this.
I would literally be like freaked out. Like I'm almost like stuck. Like what is going on here? And I had to tell her, when she started like really on this like boundary journey, she would be so upset when people like treated her as like the past version of herself. And I would have to tell her like, you are the person who created this boundary. Sometimes you have to announce your boundaries. Like, no, they are surprised. You're like, well, why are they acting like I can't have boundaries? It's like they're surprised because you never operated that way. Like, and that's not to shame her or anything, but it's just a reality of you have to share when you're creating boundaries with people so that they know and that you give them the chance to actually respect them.
Next one.
We'll just go back and forth since you want to pick. How do you continue to show up and help people take care of themselves when you're mentally drained? So I will preference this question. I was thinking about you being a yoga instructor, and if you take her classes, you know, she sometimes will insert like things that you're learning, things that you're going through in life and say, oh, like this week I've been practicing stillness. And so it makes me, every time you do that, it makes me like realize like, wow, this is like a real person who goes through things and still continues to show up and create this safe space for me to practice my own self-care. So that's why I wrote this question. And I would love to know why you, like, how do you do that?
Yeah. I think sometimes as a yoga teacher, I'm like a teacher, a preacher, a therapist, a friend, like, and I think, you know, as you go through teacher training, so I got my certification in 2019, and I've been teaching ever since. It's like you learn about messaging, and I think that it used to be something I forced, and now it's become like some of my favorite parts of teaching. And now, like, I always say, like, we try to start somewhere physically so we can change or transfer intellectually. So if I'm talking about opening, I'm going to start you in a reclined butterfly. I'm not going to show that to the camera, but you have open hips, open chest.
Right.
So that with the hope of that, you're going to, like, your body is in a place of openness, and then you're going to go with that place into your mind. But, like, I'm going to be super honest, like, on Thursday, I had to teach at 7 a.m., and I came in and I was like, wow, like, can I show up with, like, all of my feelings right now?
Yeah.
Who's in the class? Can I show up, like, as Faith after results that I learned?
Yeah.
Or do I cover some of that up and, like, try to, like, tiptoe around people's feelings? Like, who is this class for today? Is it for me? Is it for them? Usually I'm serving. I love to serve, and I'm, like, that beacon of, like, hope for you. But it's really hard. Like, Thursday was really hard for me. Lindsay came to class, one of our good friends, and she, on her way out, she was like, how are you doing? And I was like, don't ask me that because I might cry. But I told her, I was like, it was really hard. You know, it kind of feels ingenuine when I'm not speaking about what I really care about. But it's like, when is the time and the place for things? Because people should know who I am through what I'm teaching, and what kind of person I am. But that doesn't mean that this is the stage for politics or whatever. So I think that, like you said, like, I try to keep it as present as possible. Like, I remember one time I had a training at work that week that was whatever we learned in that training was what we were talking about in class. And I used to teach like 10 classes a week and try to do a message different every day. I was like, Faith,
no. Be realistic.
Literally. So I started doing one message a week, which challenges me and the students because they come so often that a lot of them are hearing the same message. It challenges me because, yes, I write this message on a sticky note, but every time I teach, it's gonna show up different. I'm gonna show up different. The students are gonna show up different. How can I go deeper into that message? Vice versa. I say this to, like, kind of cushion myself, but I also believe it. Repetition brings clarity. If you're hearing the same thing, if you're moving the same way, like, what can you see? How can you stay curious? With a 9 to 5, I'm going to work. My day looks like different, you know, day to day, but it's the same motion. We are so autopiloted. That it's like repetition does bring clarity. And can you go deeper into the message? Can you go deeper into the pose? It's not just stretching. It's not just yoga. Like, it's a mental, physical, spiritual, emotional. Like, you don't know how many people come up to me after class like, cried, or like I like felt this huge release, like I don't know why I'm crying. And I think that's like something that I hope for people that find yoga. Every single response is always like, I'm not flexible, and I'm like, you do not have to be flexible. I always say I want to break this, you know, what is it called? Stigma. Yes. Always want you to think stability over flexibility. The stability, as you build that in your life, the flexibility will inevitably come. So I know I just said so much, but
no. Okay, so first let's unpack these things. The first thing I want to point out, which is kind of a little off subject, but it speaks to your point of, like, you don't have to be flexible. I brought my big, like, football playing friend,
Yeah.
like childhood friend, to a yoga class, and I've been trying to get him into your yoga class, but
I missed that one week.
It was like the 1 week that he was in town because he doesn't live here. But he is like a super athlete, like one of the people that's like, you need to be working. Like if I'm working out and I post some ice cream, one thing about it, he's going to say something. He's going to be like, so what you work out for? Like, why are you this way? But I had him in that yoga class.
Hate that. I'm like, leave that away from me. Good.
Sweating. He was, and there's proof.
Yeah.
Okay, there was people there. He was literally shaking in his boots like, what? I thought we were about to be doing stretching.
Yeah.
We was doing planks.
My favorite thing is when girls bring their boyfriends and the guys walk in and they're like, I'm ready for yoga, you know.
And then they're
they're looking at their girlfriend like, I'm like, exactly.
Yeah.
Welcome to yoga.
Right. And then so he's like, oh well, maybe we should do Pilates. Okay.
I'm like, that's even harder.
I'm like, you haven't learned your lesson. But every time you're in town, let's go.
Gosh, right.
Because you think that I just don't do anything because I don't want to do what I call boy workouts.
Right.
Okay,
weight training, all that.
Like, I'll do weight training, but I'm not about to lift 70 pounds. I don't want to. Yeah. There's nothing about me that wants to do that.
Yeah.
And, like, he'll be like, you're BSing. Like, you're babysitting. You're playing in the gym.
Yeah. You know what? So, in the summer, I was on this crazy kick.
Yes.
My Instagram saw it. I, did weight training. I hired a trainer. I trained, I started 2 days a week, went up to 5 or 4, 7 a.m. every single day, would wake up, 7 a.m. Practice. It felt like a practice. Work out, go to work, teach. I was exhausted, but I felt really good about doing something because it's I grew up as a gymnast. My mom, my grandma, my aunt, my sister, all gymnastics coaches. So there was no choice but to be fit or in the wellness area. But I wasn't sleeping. I would literally get home at midnight and wake up at 5 and do it all over again. Yeah. Every single time. So I was driving here and I was thinking about just the word of boundaries because it's honestly, I haven't worked out in over 2 months. Yeah. Which is not normal for me.
You, yeah.
But it's you have to accept the times in your life. That was summer. I had the stamina for that. Right now, I do not have the stamina for that. Yeah. And I'm so competitive with myself that this is the only way I can stay in bed. I'm I'm so social. I am so let's do something. If I have one day off, I'm doing something. Yes. I have to be Faith, I bet you can't stay in bed all day. How silly is that? You have to literally trick yourself. Literally, I'm how long can you relax today? Yes. And that's how I can stay in bed.
That is so crazy because
it is crazy.
My best friend always talks about how rest is so hard for our generation. Obviously every generation has people who do nothing. Yeah. Sorry.
The crickets.
Yeah, unproductive citizens of society. Yep. Yeah, even the flowers felt it. Yeah, so every generation has unproductive people. Yeah. But for our productive generation, I feel it is so difficult for us to rest. It's very, very difficult for us to just actually take a break and not feel guilty. Yes. I have that all the time. Yeah. No matter what season I'm in, I always feel I'm not doing enough. And that circles back to me being no, I need to undersell and overperform because I'm always trying to feel guilty. If I just even you talking about Thursday, I had an exam on Wednesday and I literally was no. I actually can't. Yeah. There's nothing that I can do. I can't come. And it was a little bit of back and forth, but we ended up, figuring it out. Yeah. But the whole point is that typically I would feel very guilty about that. Yeah. You should have pushed through. You should have showed up. Right. You should have just took the exam. Yeah. And you would have gotten it over with and kept pushing. And I am in this new era because of my best friend like always bringing this up of like sometimes you can rest. Like I've had stuff come up for Evolving Still where it's like deadlines, and I'm like, okay, what do I have to do to prioritize? Like I have school, which is always my priority, but then sometimes I run into situations where I need to shift my priority, and that is like I'm traumatized. Like I'm like, oh my God, I feel so guilty because I'm not doing everything that I'm supposed to do for school because I'm doing it for this stuff. And it's just like trying to really find the balance and trying to figure out how to rest is so difficult.
It's like with me having 2 jobs, like Pistons has to be my priority. And I am so blessed. I'm only 23. I have 2 like dream jobs in my eyes, and I'm so happy at both for different things. But Pistons is my priority. It's, you know, my focus in my career. So I think it's difficult sometimes because it's like I want to show up as much as I can for my students. But it's like, sorry, we have a game and I have to do this, you know? So I think it's just like, I work with my boss and my manager, and I just communicate super clearly about these are my non-negotiables. And I think that's like, when you have leaders that you align with in every way, it's not a problem. And so I'm not scared to go to them and be like, hey, I have to miss the whole month of Tuesdays, or the whole month of November Tuesdays for the, you know, because of my schedule with the Pistons. And it's like I'm comfortable with sharing that because they support me no matter what. And I also know it's important to me, like, to work for somebody that I align with in every way. I worked at a restaurant that I will not name, and I was like, absolutely not. You know, I needed extra money at the time, and, you know, I had 2 jobs already. I had the Pistons, I had Citizen, and it's so clear when you have an outlier of like, wow, they don't care about me at all, so why am I going to stay here? That's my boundary. Bye. You know, I'm going to stay at the 2 companies that actually care about me, and that I, like, my biggest thing for both of them is, like, I know their morals, their values, like, they don't hide them. I know their mission statements, and then I know the things that they do to follow up. There's no just, like, cliche, but there's no just talking the talk. Like, they both walk the walk. So it makes me so happy to work for them and to get up and go there every day. It's like, it's not a chore. It's
that's definitely a blessing, because I was really talking to a friend who was talking about like how difficult it is to navigate jobs, and like sometimes she feels like we give up too easy. And like if every inconvenience I walk into, I'm like, nope, I'm not dealing with it, right? What does that do to your character over time? And I think what you hit on the head is like the important balance, right? Like, every inconvenience, you shouldn't be doing that. But like when you actually don't align with what my actual values are, that's when it's time for me to shift. Because I don't believe in being in spaces that I don't want to be in. I think life is too short, and we all unfortunately die. Sorry. We all die. Like, that's just reality. Like, while we're here, we need to, like, live.
You might as well be in spaces that you're welcomed in. And celebrated in.
Don't make it a miserable time. You know, like, life should not be miserable every day. I hate being miserable. And so I think that it's so difficult sometimes to, like, draw the line. But when it comes to, like, my values or, like, things like that, I'm like, hard stop.
You're making this really easy for me. Bye.
And so for me, like, school, like you said, Pistons is your priority because that's your career. School is my priority because that's my career, and it's going to give me access to do the things that I want to do for the rest of my life. So that has to be my priority. But at some point, I have to say, like, okay, my first priority has to be, like, am I healthy? Am I alive? Am I, you know, going back to the boundaries of, like, not trying to overcompensate. And then after my health, it's like, okay, now I can focus and make sure that I'm like, you know, setting goals and making things happen. But if I have just a job on the side for money, I can't put that over school. That's my career. Like, even if I made 6 figures right now, school is going to take me way further, right? And so I have to make a decision. So you have to even make boundaries with like companies and things like that, but also with yourself, and say, hey, what is it that we're trying to accomplish?
Right.
And next question.
Perfect. All right. What made you interesting in teaching yoga? Okay, easy. So I grew up as a gymnast. Like I said, my whole entire family taught. And then my ballet teacher, my senior year, was like, hey, you need to cross-train. And so she required me to do yoga and Pilates. So I was far ahead of the Pilates trend.
Yes.
So when I was 17, I graduated high school, and my day would look like, I was like convinced I was going to be a professional dancer. And I did go to college, majored in dance, and I love it. That'll always be my first love. Yes. But I would wake up, go to 6 a.m. Pilates. I would walk to this restaurant, eat by myself, go to another Pilates class, then go to yoga. And I just loved it. Yeah. I liked yoga a lot more than Pilates. And I grew up, like, when you're a gym kid, a gymnastics kid, you're forced to step in when needed, like teaching, just like if you were in a big family babysitting.
Yeah.
So I have been teaching since I was 12 years old. And so when it was like, oh, like you can get a certification in this, I was like, okay, like I've already been teaching for 5 years. I hope that math is correct. And so I did my training in 2019. It's a 200-hour training. And then I taught in Northville for a really long time, or 3 years, and then I found Citizen and did a 50-hour training there for people or for teachers that already had their 200-hour. Okay. Focus in on alignment, which really fit well with me with dancing and just knowing a lot about the body. And so I also feel like, you know, a student asked me like what my why is the other day about teaching. And it's like, number one, I have the gift to teach. Yeah. I love to talk and share. But number two, it's like I am so blessed with the mentors that I've had in my life. Yeah. So it's like if I can share what I've learned and what has been passed down to me at such a young age, and like be a representation of what, you know, I've learned, then why not? And it's fun.
Yeah. That's so funny. Like, my whole life goal is to pass down knowledge that's literally why I want to be a doctor. Mm-hmm. Because I feel like I have the capacity to learn these things, and I am able to convey it and talk to people in a way that they understand it. And so my whole thing is like, I've had so many people that came before me that sacrificed and poured into me, and mentors and all the things that, like, it is my obligation almost to do the same. And when you were talking about showing up earlier, I was thinking about my students. Like, I had an experience in college. I mentored all 4 years at Jalen Rose Leadership Academy, which is in Detroit. We work with them a lot. Yeah, and so they had a program called the FATE program, and they take Michigan students, and we would literally travel to Detroit. Okay. And for me, it's home. It's like I get to go home and talk to students who are just like me that grew up, you know. And they were always so infatuated with the fact that I went to Cass for whatever reason. And I'm like, okay, like, I go to Michigan. That's cooler. But they were not. They were like, oh, okay, I guess. Like, that's fine. But they were like, but you went to Cass. Like, how was it? And I'm like, it was okay.
We have a lot of Cass people at the Pistons.
Really?
And they always remind us that they're second to none. So.
Interesting.
All love, though. All love.
And you see how it just came up naturally in conversation? Right. I feel like that's how it is for me. Yeah. I don't feel like
you don't wear it on your chest?
No, I don't think that about myself.
Okay.
I don't know if other people would disagree, but I'm just saying. But yeah, mentoring is so important. And throughout that college experience, like, college is hard, very difficult. Being pre-med, terrible. I like 0 out of 10 would not recommend unless you for sure want to be a doctor.
Yeah.
Again, don't torment yourself when you don't have to. But I would have days and times where I'm just like struggling, and it was on Fridays. Friday, my first set of kids, they know I love them because I came back to Detroit every Friday to mentor them. Okay, and I had class at 8 a.m. I would leave, go to the carpool thing, go all the way to Detroit. Like, my whole Friday's done. But it will be days where I'm just like drained. Drained. I like, how do I show up? But they gave me energy, and I don't know if that's like a similar experience for you. It's like I would walk in and they'll be like, "How was your week?" Or like I would have like a wristband from the night before or something. And they'll be like, "Oh, I know what that means." Like, you don't know what that means, girl. What are you talking about?
Yeah, I think it's the same way with yoga. Like, last week I made the mistake of booking, like, I subbed and I taught 3 classes in a day and a 9 to 5, and I was like, this is why my voice is gone. But the last class was so hard for me because it was a free class, which is amazing, but it was so many random people that I didn't know, so it's like I'm providing all of the energy. And it's not their fault whatsoever. It's just like when you don't have that relationship, it's you pouring in. And then I taught the next day, and I was subbing as well. And, like, so many people that I have great relationships walked in. And, like, I feel like when you and Vanessa and Eboni walk in, I'm like, family. Like, I'm like, yes.
The sisters from Sister Yoga.
Literally. And I think, like, you know, June that used to be at the desk, she would be like, your friends show up so much. And I could cry thinking about that, but it's like they really do. It's like I have so many friends that come, like, consistently, non-consistently, like, it doesn't matter, but it's like it's so nice, and like makes teaching so much easier when you know, and you're like, it's more like mindful serving. But it's also like there's a great gift about not knowing anybody and like bringing my gift to them. But it's always so comforting to have people that I know.
I feel like you do a really great job of, just like I said, creating that safe space and like inviting space, and like you're friendly. You make people want to like talk to you. I've been to yoga classes where I'm like, it just felt like a professional exchange.
Transactional.
And I think you create an environment that feels like you are everyone's friend. Like, oh my God, these are my friends, and like these are your real friends. And these are, if you come back to class,
you're my friend.
You can be my friend. But I want to take a second to applaud you on that, because you're like, that is why people show up. That is why people come. Because even on days where I'm like, oh, I'm so tired, I don't feel like going, I'll be like, oh, it's okay. Like, by the time I get there, Faith's going to bring me the energy that I need. And we are sometimes aligned where it's like, we're tired. We're tired. Okay, cool. But we're here. But I think you bringing your human self to the class really helps out, I think, a lot.
And I think that, like, in whatever your craft is, like, I didn't always used to be like that. Like, I think I was always Faith, but, like, I'm like, I shouldn't call out a business. I'm not going to call out a business. Prior to me teaching where I'm at, I felt like it was a business. It was like, teach the strongest person in the room. Like, it was like a workout. Like, and there's time and a place for, like, I'm teaching sculpt, which is definitely more of a workout. My favorite class was my last semester pedagogy, which is the art of teaching. And like the biggest takeaway that I had, and that was most emphasized on, was being an adjustable teacher. So when you say, like, sometimes I match your energy, like, I'm an empath. I can walk in and be like, is everybody in child's pose? Is everybody like talking? Like, I teach 5 classes a week. Every class is different, and I adjust to that. Even like, I think being a really good teacher is being able to, like, halfway through the class being able to tell a shift is happening, and then you shift on that. Like, I always have like a skeleton of a plan, but things fill in and then things change. So it's like same thing with your boundaries, like we've been talking about. Like, you have to adjust depending on who you're dealing with.
Okay, last question. I think it's my turn, but I'll let you do it.
Thank you. It's so satisfying. Okay. As a yoga instructor, do you feel like you use the tips you give your students in daily life? I hear what I'm saying to my students, and I know what I'm saying to my students. Do I apply it to my life as much as I want them to apply it to their life? No.
Okay.
It's a work in progress. Like, I've shared with a student before, it's like, what I'm saying to you, I need to hear 10 times as much.
Yeah.
You know, like, I'm speaking to myself at the same time that I'm speaking to you. And so it's like a constant, like, integration of what I'm saying into my own life. And so, like, that's another reason I teach. You know, it's, yes, I'm serving, yes, I'm giving, yes, I'm pouring, but it's also extremely fulfilling for me, like, in every way. So
and just going back to the mentoring, I feel like I learned so much from my students, and like the things that I was telling them is stuff that I also needed to hear for myself. And I had to, like, circle back and be like, you know, this is why I even said this in the first place. Like, this is the whole point. And so it's like really difficult sometimes to be the person that you're showing up for other people as all the time. And that's, again, going back to, like, the human component. You never try to, like, be someone that you're not. And so for me, it's like, even in the question, it's not realistic to do that.
No, it's not.
Every day. In your daily life, yes, you can try to practice it, but every day is just not gonna happen sometimes.
And I think, like you're saying, like, you appreciate the humanness. Like, I think everybody does. Like, and I, like, last thing I'll say, in dance, we talk about a fourth wall when you perform. Like, the audience, they know they're there, but they're not going to acknowledge you, and I'm not going to look at an audience member and stare them down. Like, there's this, like, fourth wall. That's what we call it. And so even in teaching, it's like, sometimes I'll ask, like, does that make sense? And everybody just looks at me, and I'm like, yes or no? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, no, like, you can talk. It's just a class. Like, it's not so serious. And then, like, the other thing, you know, somebody, like, would talk in a yoga voice. Like, we talk about a yoga voice, and every time I feel like I'm going towards that, I'm like, Faith, that's not your voice. Like, just speak normal. And just, like, I have to constantly remind myself, like, be human. Like, you're literally, this is a class. Like, they know you. You are trying to get to know them. And so just being, like, as genuine as possible.
Literally just not being performative. I think it's like being authentic.
And it's less, like, it's not more efficient in the way of, like, getting things done, but it's like, it's more restful. And it doesn't take so much energy when you're not like, okay, we're gonna do this today. You know, all this stuff. So
thank you so much for joining me for this episode. I love Faith, so I brought her Eboni to you so that you can love her too. Period. Do you want to tell the people where to find you if they want to take some yoga classes?
Faith Sheffield, SHEFFIELD. That's my Instagram. I post weekly on when I'm going to teach, and I am at Citizen Yoga in Detroit, right next to Moots or the Gucci store.
Before I end this episode, I'm going to share a fun fact that I didn't say the whole time Faith was talking. Fun fact, I used to do gymnastics.
Oh my gosh.
And then I got injured.
Oh no.
So I don't talk about it. It's a sensitive subject.
Okay, well, all the best girls start in gymnastics.
Period. Anyway, like, comment, or subscribe. Give us any questions that you want to see next or any comments on this episode. Thank you for tuning in to Evolving Still, the podcast.